Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Slave Ages Podcast. And today's an extra special treat for me. I get to interview a wonderful composer, producer, label owner, and guitarist. It's Andrew Synowiec. Uh, Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Preston. Really appreciate it.
It's great to have you. We're talking about your new album with Oz Noy, which is Recreational Substance, which comes out January 17th, 2025. So let's get into this, Andrew, and let first tell our audience about how you and Oz Noy got to this point where you want to do this joint guitar duet album.
Yeah, well, I've always kind of been a fan of two guitar albums, whether it's Eric Johnson guesting on a Steve Morse album, or you had your John Scofield, Pat Metheny albums, things like that. I grew up in the age of G3, where it was Joe Satriani, Eric Johnson, and Steve Vai, all
Yeah.
touring together. And I just always really enjoyed any type of music that really celebrates the guitar. I've always been drawn to that. And Oz and I had some mutual friends, which led to us playing a gig maybe, gosh, probably 4 years ago. And it was really fun. It was a great turnout. And he hit me up and said, "Hey, I'm coming into town." And I actually had a gig scheduled. And so I said, "Hey, we got to do it again, but actually, let's make a record out of it." So he was here for a few days. We like rehearsed. We sent each other the music back and forth. Decided on the tunes. We rehearsed one day, did the gig the next day, had a day off, and then went into the studio and spent one long day and banged out this entire record.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So the record's coming out on House of Sin Records, which is your label, correct?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, to call it a label, I guess that's what it is by today's standards, but it's just for my own music, things that I put out.
Great. And you have, I believe it's two full albums and an EP already out.
That's correct. Yep.
One thing a lot of listeners may not know, one thing I didn't know until I looked into it is you have such a breadth of material out there that's not maybe not under your own name, but you have a lot of different projects out there. And I was really thrilled to see you work with Oz, who I've seen live two or three times when I lived in Chicago. I'm in Atlanta now, but you're in LA, right?
Yes. Yeah, I've been in LA 20 years now.
Yeah. So in terms of you talked about a little bit about him being out there and you recorded it live in one day, which is pretty amazing. And the band you have is, let's see, Marvin Smitty Smith on drums and Hadrien Feraud on bass. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Was that the band you used when you two got together for your live gig?
It is. Yeah. That was kind of the point is it was good to have, the songs were sort of, I don't know if you could call it road tested, but at least we had played them once in front of an audience and everybody got a chance to sort of get their feet wet on the material.
Right. And I appreciate the reference you made to G3, Barry Johnson, Satriani, and Vice. I know they have an album which is coming out, another album coming out now, pretty
Oh,
much.
very cool.
Yeah, finally getting back together. One of the things that I always loved about Johnson was his tone, his dexterity, and how, especially when he's playing a Stratocaster. I think for this album, well, let me ask, did you use your Gibson Les Paul for all the electric parts?
Let's see. I used two different guitars. One is a Les Paul that I have, and then I have another guitar made by B.A. Ferguson Guitars, which is similar style. It's got two humbucking pickups, um, and it's just a really comfortable, fun guitar to play. Um, and I just sort of let my intuition guide me in terms of where to use which one. That's on the electric side, of
Mhm.
course, and then there is one song which, when you rattle off these names of who played on it, people can pretty much get a good idea of what they're in for, but I didn't want it to be just over the top, nothing but notes flying at you. Um, Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I always try and find balance. And so I always also like to do something that people might not expect. And so there's a song called Brothers.
Brothers. Yeah.
And yeah,
Fantastic.
exactly. Thank you. So on that one, Oz actually played 12-string acoustic, and with this really unique tuning where it's not actually tuned like it typically would be, where the strings are in octaves. I think they were actually in fifths or something. So you get these crazy wide voicings. And then I
Okay.
played nylon string for that one, and went back and overdubbed this kind of like pedal steely, um, sort of very ambient sounding pad stuff, just kind of in the background.
Well, since
So
we jumped into the song, and I'm sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
no, just that those were the two guitars on the electric side, and then nylon for on the acoustic side for me.
Yeah, that Brothers is amazing. I thought that was a nylon string and acoustic bike, and I thought it was electric guitar volume pedal, and then it
Yeah.
just a little bass and a bass solo and a little hi-hat. Just beautiful, beautiful song. So let's talk about that song, and we'll go to your other compositions that you wrote for the album. Um, did you write that for this project in particular, or was it one of the songs which you repurposed for this project?
Um, I think it was just it kind of that was one where it just sort of fell out of the sky. You know, I just put my hand on the guitar and played that first chord and the melody into the second chord, and it really just wrote itself. Right around the time that I knew this project was coming up. And so I kind of, and I knew also that I wanted to have, you know, again, a sense of balance. And so I wanted to have some other outlet, you know, to express ourselves and improvise that wasn't just really bombastic, high energy stuff. And it just sort of clicked in my mind, like, oh, this would be perfect for this project.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. They all are wonderful songs. When did you start the writing process for your material for the album?
Um, I don't know, a few decades ago, probably. I mean, I'm always kind of writing, and there's always things that don't make it off the island, you know, so to speak, and then they just sort of stay. I literally just have a folder of ideas, um, and I'll sometimes I go back and just dig through that and go, oh yeah, that was cool,
Mhm.
or they might act as a springboard to another idea. Um, yeah, just always kind of trying to write and soak in inspiration from other sources, and it's I'm so fortunate to have these outlets in LA where I have you know, a chance to play gigs with different, as you said, so many different configurations, and certain things kind of are seem like, oh, this is going to be perfect and tailor made for this, which is great. Another great thing is when you go, huh, this seems like it might not fit, but how could we make it fit? Um, so kind of looking at it from two different angles sometimes.
Wow. So you have 8 songs total. There are 8 songs total on the album. I think you wrote 5 of them. Oz Noy wrote the rest on Recreational Substance. Um, did you record any additional material which did not make it on this project?
No, I wish we had, but like I said, to I mean, that's one day, including loading in, getting sounds, taking a lunch, taking a dinner. Um, that was it was funny. I actually thought like maybe we should get more just in case, or to have leftovers. But Oz felt pretty adamant, like, no, let's just try, and we only need 8. You know, 8 is a good amount of songs, especially for an instrumental guitar record. Um, it's just any more than that starts to be a little bit excessive.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's really what we did, is we focused on getting the best performances out of these 8 compositions.
Well, they're all wonderful songs, and it is a nice variety of compositions and performances on the album. Um, let's start with the song Big City, which is a song that you wrote. Brilliant rhythm, funky rhythm guitar, some great bass playing. There's some clean, really great lead lines, and then a very dirty, distorted solo. Talk a little bit about the song. How did it come to you?
Sure. I think that was one that probably just started with that bass riff, which I wrote on guitar, but instantly thought, okay, that'd be great for a bass player to play. Um, and then like in terms of writing something like that, what I would do is record that bass part, and then I sort of instantly had an idea for a melody, um, but it's nice to be able to hear the one idea, kind of the bass layer, and then add melody on top of that. So what I would do is just sort of layer them really just in Pro Tools. And so that kind of repeating bass figure acts as an A section. And then for a B section, I sort of went, okay, we need some kind of relief from this. I mean, it's in 7/4. It's kind of almost like relentless sort of forward motion thing. And then you get a little bit of a release when it goes to the B section, where it stays on one chord for a long time.
Right. It's amazing. It's a great way to start the album too. Wow. So
Thank
in
you.
terms of the live performance before you recorded, did you write out the parts, or did the band just go from your demos?
Yes and yes. So I definitely had charts for everything. And I'm trying to think. There was actually a few that I've played before that I had just enough of a recording to go, hey, here's one way that it could go, but don't by any means think that this is the only way it could go. But again, something to hear as a demo. Or like in the instance of Big City, I had my own, albeit terribly rough sounding demo, but again, just a way to hear, okay, this is how the parts kind of fit together. And I would give them basically like a Dropbox link. Here's a folder with all these rough MP3s and charts. So, different people have different ways they like to learn and kind of internalize the music. Some people like to see it on the page. Some people like to hear it. For me, I think a combination of both works best.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and you mentioned Big City. That was the first single from the album as well. Wonderful song.
Yes. Thank you.
Um, if I could jump to the song, we talked about Brothers already. So my favorite song on the album right now, anyway, is Burn That Bridge. What do you
Oh,
remember
cool.
composing and recording that?
So I that is one instance where I used that song in a previous group called SRT. It's an organ trio
Yeah, with
with John Robinson on
Ron
drums and
Robinson.
Mitch Town on organ.
Amazing.
And yeah, we've been playing that one for a while. And again, I just sort of seemed like, oh, this would be great for two guitars. So and also, Marvin Smitty Smith, his playing is so, it's just a different thing than JR's. So to me, it's always interesting to hear um, what do two different people do with the same nuts and bolts that you give them.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, they're such different drummers. And I would hate to be the drummer to pick up the sticks after hearing a J.R. Robinson part and come up with a new one. But Marvin Smith is also an amazing drummer in his own right. And he came up with something great. I just love that song. It's the distorted lead and the rhythm parts are great. The backbeat's terrific. And then the change in the chorus, and then the second solo with a wah-wah pedal is just fantastic. How did you decide which parts you were going to play versus Oz?
Well, that kind of usually came down to like if I wrote it, I would play the melody and vice versa. Um, but like in the case of Oz's, I think he does so much trio playing that his music almost didn't need a second guitar. So that
Mhm.
was a fun challenge to just figure out, how can I add? Maybe there's nothing I can add, but if like a lot of times I was just kind of either doubling him or harmonizing him, um, or just like playing with a weird sound or something where it's just more textural than anything else. Um, and then I just tend to write more from a standpoint of like this is what you're going to do and that's what you're going to do. It's a little bit more clear cut.
Mhm.
So I think it was a bit more straightforward, um, but certainly it's always open to interpretation.
Wow, wonderful. So the next song on my list is Cuffle Shuffle. You talked about the harmonized guitar parts, and this one has a great guitar kind of bridge part, harmonized guitar bridge to it. Tell us about that song, Cuffle Shuffle.
Yeah, thanks. I I've also always been drawn to Les Paul, the person, and just the genius that he was in terms of the recording studio. And I mean, I wouldn't be recording guitar at home if it weren't for him, you know. And he did these incredible arrangements where it was like these all these guitars in tight harmony. And you know, this being a two guitar album, I just thought it would be kind of cool to, you know, pay tribute to him. You know, not verbatim, it's sort of an oblique reference, but there is like the opening figure, Oz and I are playing this thing together. And
Hmm.
then it also ends the tune where we're playing this sort of it's just like a diminished kind of thing in close harmony. It's just kind of a fun thing. Um, yeah, so I that was kind of my concept with that.
Yeah, and it worked so well, especially with that really nuanced shuffle that the rhythm section's playing. It's just a fantastic part. And then the rhythm guitar parts are so full and chunky. Love that. Great. So the last song that I have on my list to talk about is The Royal You. What can you tell us about The Royal You?
Sure, that was another SRT composition that I
Oh,
brought in, and again, I just thought it would be fun to hear how that might work with two guitars.
mhm.
Um, I always sort of heard it as like an '80s Miles Davis thing,
Oh,
um, and we even sort of treated the drums on that one to where they kind of sound. I'm going to use the word dated in a loving way. And so I sort of like I feel like when I used that song in the SRT context, it was cool, but it wasn't how I initially really heard it. And so I kind of wanted to see if I could get closer to my initial concept, which again was like that kind of 80s Miles kind of thing. And it was really interesting to see how it turned out with this band. Oz, I think, used like a fuzz pedal with his volume rolled off, which almost has like a little bit of a sitar
hmm.
sound to
Okay.
it. And then he also has this great there's a pedal where you basically it's like a sustain pedal for guitar. So you can hear that pretty prominently throughout. Um, and one other thing, it's like funny, you know, I don't know if album sequencing even matters anymore, if people ever listen in a linear fashion, but the for the sequencing of the album, so you mentioned my song, The Royal You, and then right before that is Half Romantic,
That's
which is
romantic.
one of
Yeah.
Oz's songs. And they have a similar like there's a similar vibe, tempo, and kind of feel about them. And at first I kept trying to separate them in the album order. And then it dawned on me like maybe I should put them back to back and almost have it be like this kind of continuous like hypnotic type of thing.
Mhm.
So you'll have to let me know whether that worked out or not.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I think with instrumental music, and it's you're talking just 8 songs. You have no songs which are over 8 minutes long. For me as a listener, I would love to listen to it from beginning to end and then listen to it again. And the reason is that, first of all, you have two distinct guitar players with two different distinct, well, multiple different guitar sounds. So I want to try to pick out who is playing what, where. And of course, I'm not a guitarist, but I'd like to do that. And then there's so much going on in terms of nuance in the rhythm section that I want to hear back to back. And then I want to also kind of dig into listen to the music in terms of the compositions and the changes in rhythm and structure from song to song. But that's just me, and maybe that's how I listen to music, especially instrumental music. I
Right.
think the way you have it sequenced is brilliant, and overall, recreational substance is a wonderful product, a package, wonderful playing, great compositions, and two great guitars. Um,
Thank you. That was my hope. It's I I love instrumental music, but it can be, you get two guitarists together in a room, and it's like it can turn into the volume war, notes war. I definitely luckily, actually, it really wasn't an issue. I mean, Oz is such a sensitive player, and he has a lot of experience playing with other guitar players too. Um, so it was almost like didn't even need to be said. But that was my hope that it would be. I'm always trying to put out instrumental music that non-musicians could enjoy.
yeah, it's for instrumental music with just guitars, sometimes it's difficult to keep it, I don't want to say dumbed down for us non-guitarists, but simple if the non-guitarists can appreciate and love it and still have some space in the music. And you have that here. And I think last time I saw Oz was with, he was playing with two other guitarists. It might have been Jimmy Herring and Wayne Krantz, probably.
Sure, yeah,
Um, which I mean, that's a lot
a lot of
of
firepower.
yes, absolutely. But it was always tasteful, and that's something which this album certainly has. Recreational Substance just has such a great feel to it. There are 8 songs, and I kept thinking, yeah, I could use some more.
Oh, good. Leave them wanting more, right?
Exactly.
Well, hey,
So
maybe there'll be a part two. You never know.
I hope so. And I know that you on your website, which is andrew Synowiec.com, you list, well, first of all, you list your equipment, which is fantastic. And you also talk about your studio and your other projects, your own solo projects as well, the projects you work on, your studio work, which is terrific. But I noticed that you also have a few dates coming up with us. Could you
Yes,
talk about those plans?
sure. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we have a few shows in January corresponding with the NAMM show. Um, so I guess I can go ahead and say the dates. January 22nd at the Baked Potato, January 24th at the Grape, which is in Ventura, California, and then January 26th at Alva's showroom down in San Pedro. And I believe tickets are on sale now for all those.
Fantastic. And I know that you're always busy with your studio work. And I know Oz is busy with his albums as well.
Yeah.
Is
I
there
should
any
add also, there's going to be some dates in New York as well. They have not landed as of the time of this interview, but should be right around there, just kind of shortly after the LA dates. We'll do probably 3 or 4 dates on the East Coast.
fantastic? I hope to get up to New York, hopefully in the spring. I try to avoid New York in the winter, but I
Yeah,
love to see you guys perform. The album, Andrew, is fantastic. Is there anything
thank you.
else that we haven't touched on that you want to cover?
No, I think you did a great job. I'm glad that you listened so thoroughly. It sounds like our concept came across, so that makes me happy. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's a wonderful album. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you can buy the album via Bandcamp. Is that correct?
As of the time of this airing, I guess I would say it should be up on Bandcamp, and certainly anywhere you stream instrumental guitar music, it will be available.
Is there any plans for it to come out on CD and or vinyl?
I will probably press CDs. It's just vinyl's great. It's just it takes a lot longer. It's
Right.
much more expensive, and it's harder to travel with. Um, so and maybe it's just I grew up in the age of CDs, so it's just kind of if I'm gonna have I personally still love having physical product. I know a lot of people don't, but I still think it's nice. And as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some dates all over the place, and it's just nice to have CDs are just travel so much better than records. So
And I prefer to support the artist directly. And with Bandcamp, on Bandcamp Fridays, you can do that where the artist gets all the money, but I prefer to have the physical product as well. CDs will be fantastic. And this is something which You recorded in your home studio. Well, your studio.
We did this at an outside studio. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's actually called Big City Studios. That's hence the name of the first track on the album.
Oh, really? Who was the
Yeah.
engineer?
Paul Tavener. Yeah, he's it's up in I want to say Chatsworth or something like that. I've done, it's one of those things. I've done a ton of projects there for other people, and always had in the back of my mind, man, it'd be great to bring something in here one day. So the just kind of scheduling and everything else, kind of the stars aligned to finally do that. So
And as you mentioned, it was recorded basically live in studio with the band, and then there was some overdubs as well. But the sound quality it's first rate. I didn't know it was done in one day.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, a lot of that again, I would Paul Tavener recorded it, and then John Paterno mixed it. And he's been had a hand in most of my records, actually. He's a really great engineer, producer, mixer. So yeah, can't thank him enough.
Great. Is there anything else, Andrew, you want to add?
No, just hope to see people at the shows. That's really where this music is designed to be, performed, and it's a living, breathing thing. So hopefully people will come out and see it in real time.
Absolutely. So Recreational Substance comes out on January 17th, 2025. I'll include a link to Andrew's um, website as well as Bandcamp, so you can pick up the album there and also check out his other music because he has a lot of wonderful music. Andrew, I certainly appreciate your time. Great project, and take care.
Likewise, thank you so much, Preston. I appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna turn this off then.